8.3 billion devices are connected via the Internet of Things. That's more devices communicating and transmitting data than there are people on this earth. Now, when I think of the Internet of Things, the first thing that comes to mind is computers and smartphones. But nowadays, companies are adding sensors to anything they can imagine, such as a coffee pot, which adds 2 shots of espresso just because your smartwatch told it you might not have gotten such a good night's sleep. Or a doll, which can communicate in live time with a child. These opportunities with technology are endless, but we really cannot forget about the cost. The cost, such as this child who's communicating with the doll's voice is being recorded and cataloged in a company's server. These costs which offer greater technological advances but require greater responsibility within companies. Good morning. My name is Taylor Ziegler. These are my colleagues Jenny, Jared, Mark, and Alex. We are UF Consulting. And I just wanted to begin today by thanking you, Amazon Board of Directors, for inviting us here to talk about your part of the Internet of Things puzzle, Alexa. So today we're going to go through an ethical, legal, financial analysis about your always listening device, which will lead to why it is imperative for Amazon to release an independent privacy audit to verify your privacy policies. So before we take this deep dive, let's just make sure we're all on a common ground. What exactly is Alexa? So Alexa is the voice-operated personal assistant software. It's software that can write your shopping list, do your shopping for you, or even control the devices in your smartphone from the convenience of your voice. So Amazon is the software, or Alexa is the software behind many of Amazon's popular products, such as the Echo, Tap, and Dot, and more recently, Ford cars and smartphones have also been enabled with Alexa. So we see what it is. Let's see how it actually operates. Well, as it says, Alexa is always listening, but Alexa is not always transmitting, which means it's waiting to hear the wake word Alexa. When this wake word is said, Alexa awakens and begins transmitting the recording back to Amazon's servers. These servers then process the information and act as Alexa's actual brain. Once they have processed their request, they send the information back to the user's Alexa, who then verbalizes it to the user. So with this, Amazon has a value of customer obsessed, and you're honoring that with how you're treating Alexa and users' privacies. But just because of the always listening nature of the device, there are many concerns that come up. Many of these concerns relating to privacy, such as who has access to my voice and this data? And is there a chance it could be hacked into and used as a listening device within my own home? These problems, and while Amazon appears to be doing everything right, unfortunately, the climate surrounding the Internet of Things is not trustworthy. And this is due to things such as consumers fearing that Samsung smart TVs are being used to spy on them by the CIA, or the fact that Congress just passed that it's legal for consumers' data to be sold by internet service providers. Consumers can't even trust what they're being told by companies, such as in the case with Snapchat, which was recently sued by the FTC for not properly using the consumer's private photos. So in all of these cases, it's just creating an atmosphere of mistrust within the Internet of Things. This atmosphere is so bad that 92%, so that is almost all consumers, do not believe the fact that the companies will keep their information private. So Amazon operates within this Internet of Things. Alexa is a part of it. And here we are today to tell you, Amazon, how to increase transparency and truly build a loyal user base with the foundation of trust. So that was a lot, right? So let's take a step back. Basically, the key takeaways of what I just said is the Internet of Things is endless. The opportunities are incredible, but there are privacy flaws due to the nature of what it is. And Alexa is a part of that. So next, we will go into the obligations of Amazon's Alexa in the ethical, legal, and financial atmosphere, or sphere, which will lead to why it's imperative for this independent privacy audit to truly improve relationships, verify compliance, and overall increase sales and increase profits. Now, while you're listening to this presentation today, the main piece we're trying to get at is value. Value is a fundamental part of ethics, and I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to begin speaking on that.
Thank you, Taylor. Now let's look at some of the ethical obligations for the use of a device like Alexa. First, let's take a look at what we see as a primary ethical concern, privacy. So what is privacy? Privacy is a fundamental right needed for autonomy and the protection of human dignity, and serves as a foundation for many other rights. So to see how consumers value privacy, let's take a look at these statistics. 74% of Americans deem it very important to be in control of their information, and 25% of Americans are concerned about online tracking. So, in order to have privacy and have convenience, we must have a trade-off where we give up some privacy in exchange for convenience. So, convenience too is ethically correct because it maximizes efficiency and satisfies our wants and needs, which increases happiness and encourages human flourishing. So it is important to note here that not each consumer values privacy and convenience equally. So no one consumer will give privacy and convenience the same importance to reach this overall value. Ultimately, in order to get perceived value, we must get convenience, less the privacy concerns. So to see how this value trade-off ties in with Alexa, let's take a look at convenience. Convenience in terms of Alexa allows you to use your time more efficiently and focus on those tasks that are really important to you. So Alexa, for instance, allows you to get news, schedule appointments, and compile a shopping list, all without ever touching a keyboard. This increases overall quality of life. So, now that we've talked about convenience, let's talk about privacy. So, in order to have convenience, we will have some potential loss of privacy. Privacy involves autonomy and trust. Autonomy is the ability to make rational decisions without being afraid of how others will judge you. Trust is your ability to form relationships with others by sharing information, personal information with them. So let's see how this relates to Alexa. Let's imagine Morgan, a consumer. Morgan is interested in the convenience that Alexa brings, but is unwilling to purchase an Alexa product because of privacy concerns. Morgan does not know if Alexa is constantly listening and recording everything that he says, which decreases the overall comfort that he feels in his home. Morgan's trust with Amazon is broken because he does not know if what he says at home stays at home. So this is a lost opportunity. So let's go back to the overall equation. In order to get perceived value, we must get convenience minus the privacy loss. And in order to maximize value, we need to increase convenience and lower privacy loss. So again, recall that not every consumer gives privacy and convenience the same importance. Lastly, I would like to note that the more advanced that technology gets, the more risks there are and the more need for protection there is. This leads straight into our legal analysis that Jared will now do.
Thank you, Jenny. Jenny explained the importance of privacy and our willingness to trade some of that privacy for convenience. And on a broader social level, we can see that we're legally required to sacrifice some privacy in order to further social interests. We'll take a look at this using an example that's had a high profile in the media recently. On November 22nd, 2015, at 9:30 a.m., James Bates called 911, alerting dispatchers that his friend Victor Collins was dead in a hot tub on his back patio. After detectives investigated the scene, they determined that the death was likely a result of homicide committed by Bates. What complicates this matter for Amazon is that someone allegedly heard music streaming from Bates' Amazon Echo device on the evening of Collins' death. Because of this, police issued Amazon 2 search warrants, both of which Amazon refused to comply with. It wasn't until James Bates gave Amazon permission to release the recordings that they did so. While this incident was ultimately resolved, it is possible that criminal investigators will seek to use Alexa as evidence in the future, and Amazon should be ready to deal with that. Usually, compliance with the law or applications of the law is a good thing, but in the case of search warrants that are unjust, it might be in the interest of Amazon not to comply with these search warrants in order to protect the privacy of its consumers. So under the Fourth Amendment, American citizens are protected against unreasonable searches and seizures. What search warrants attempt to do is establish that these searches and seizures are in fact reasonable. And to do this, they must first establish probable cause. So how do we establish probable cause? There are two main factors that must be satisfied in order for probable cause to be established. The first of which is that there must be sufficient evidence that a crime was actually committed. And the second part being that there must be a sufficient likelihood that evidence from the crime would be found by using the search warrant. And the second factor is the one that I'd like to focus on, because this is the one that Amazon disputed. Amazon believes that the way in which they record and collect data would make it unlikely that evidence would be yielded in the course of a criminal investigation. Although the government doesn't have any understanding of how exactly Amazon collects and records this data, because Amazon keeps this information private. So because of this lack of understanding, it is very possible that the government, law enforcement, and Amazon could butt heads in the future over topics such as this. In addition to being compliant with valid search warrants, it's also important that Amazon be compliant with consumer protection laws. Specifically, in the case of user protection laws, if Amazon refuses to comply with these laws, Amazon could be found guilty of negligence. In late December, a 6-year-old girl purchased a $170 dollhouse and 4 pounds of cookies using an Alexa device without her parents' permission. Because of this, user authorization is very important for Alexa. Amazon does provide the option to add a PIN to enable voice purchasing, and it also allows the option to disable voice purchasing altogether, although it is unclear whether these precautions go far enough in terms of user voice authorization. And recently in the news, Amazon has been found liable of negligence in terms of violating the Federal Trade Commissions Act by allowing millions of purchases to be made within mobile applications by children. And because of this, Amazon had to pay $70 million in refunds for these purchases. The last aspect of compliance that I'd like to focus on is security. Amazon claims that the data collected through Alexa is encrypted, and this encryption makes it essentially hack-proof. Although, unfortunately, Amazon doesn't release the method by which they encrypt this data, so consumers have no way of verifying this. And in 2014, Yahoo had over 500 million accounts breached due to hacking efforts. And they're currently being sued for gross negligence over this. This is a situation that Amazon should definitely try to avoid, especially in the case of Alexa, because having something so personal such as your voice stolen is likely to have worse repercussions than something like an email address or a credit card number. And now that we've gone through our legal analysis, Mark will explain the financials of Amazon Alexa.
Thanks, Jared. So now we've really talked about the ethical and legal considerations involved with this entire process. So let's delve into the financials. Now, despite the concerns that both Jared and Jenny brought up, Alexa is generating a profit. It has a positive return on investment. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, in broad strokes, Alexa has two components. The software itself, which is deemed Alexa, and the hardware, which is the Dot, the Tap, and the Echo. These three devices range from $50 to $180, primarily diversified on speaker size and quality. Now, since its debut in late 2014, Amazon has seen exponential growth in their sales of these devices. But that's not the whole story. Individuals can order items online through voice ordering with Alexa. Now, this graph is depicting how often consumers really use this voice shopping. I'd like to point your attention and highlight two first bars in this graph. 26% of consumers very often or somewhat often order through this voice shopping mechanism. So this is interesting, but what do these numbers mean? This is the bottom line. Amazon has seen a 7% increase in spending on consumer packaged goods, just day-to-day non-durable goods, after a consumer orders or purchases this Amazon Alexa. Now, my father, he got an Amazon Echo not too long ago, and he decided to order 15 pounds of coffee beans just because he thought it was fun. Now, my parents like to order little gadgets and unnecessary goods off of this, and it's reinventing the impulsive buy. It's not needing credit card information to be put in, there's no thought necessarily required to be putting into ordering these items, and you can just order them through a simple voice command. Now, these are the projected revenues as a Business Insider for the foreseeable future in the next 4 years. As you can see in 2017, these numbers are in millions. As you can see in 2017, we're looking at a 50-50 split between device revenue and transaction revenue, and it's just over that $2 billion mark. Now, ramping out to 2020, we're looking at $4 billion in device sales and $7 billion in transaction revenues. Now, through our strategy that we're going to detail shortly, with this independent privacy audit, we really feel that there's an untapped base of consumers that we can gain access to. Now, these consumers are like Morgan. They have concerns about private conversations in their own home. They don't know exactly when or how Alexa is listening or recording. Now, just a brief overview of what we've gone through so far. We talked about the Internet of Things and Alexa's integral role in this entire process. We've detailed the entirety of our analysis, talking about the obligations of Amazon's Alexa from an ethical standpoint, a legal standpoint, as well as a financial standpoint. Now we're going to go ahead and make a shift in our presentation and discuss the strategy and how we can incorporate all of our findings from this analysis and really leverage off of that with this independent privacy audit in terms of improving relationships, verifying compliance, and increasing profits. I'm going to hand it off to Alex to do just that.
Thank you. So we just heard from Mark that our suggested strategy is to create a privacy audit. So I'm going to explain why this is a strategic move and how this will fix both our ethical, our legal concerns, and how this will lead us to capitalizing on a financial opportunity through this. So before we get into the privacy audit, I'd like to compare the idea of a privacy audit with that of financial statements. So John B. Stetson Company was the first U.S. company to furnish audited financial statements. They did this in hopes to improve their investors' trust, thus increasing their access to capital. And it worked. In other U.S. companies, they followed suit, and this largely led to the birth of audited financial statements. Now, Amazon can do the same thing and be the John B. Stetson Company of privacy audits. So both of these audits increase trust by providing an independent third party's assessment of the company. So let's get a little more in depth here with the strategy. So the strategy is a privacy audit to verify Alexa's privacy protection measures, which will end up in a report released to the public. Now, why? We're doing this, again, to increase stakeholder trust, primarily for our customers and the government. Now, by customers, we're talking about our current customers and the potential ones, like Morgan, that we're unsure of the privacy measures, and we can, with this privacy audit, gain their trust and increase our customer base. We also have the government here, so the governing bodies that oversee our operations. Now, how? Well, we'll have to partner with technology and consulting firms to conduct this independent assessment and provide the privacy report. So let's take a deeper look at the report. It'll start with a description of Alexa as a product, and then it will describe its capabilities. That will follow up with the analysis of Alexa. So going through the operations of it, the recordings, the data, and so forth. Then it will conclude with the third party's opinion on the sufficiency of the privacy measures. So with the analysis here, the analysis will answer all the questions that our consumers have. How does the device work? Where is the data stored? How is it stored? Is it capable of being hacked into? Can my device be used as a listening device? All these questions will be answered. So now that we've talked about what the audit is, let's look at it from an ethical perspective. So to bring back our analysis from before, the value is the perceived trade-off between convenience and privacy. And privacy we broke up into two parts. We said autonomy and trust. So by providing this audit report, we are increasing the understandability of our product, which then helps our customers create more rational decisions, which then increases their autonomy. And in the same vein, the purpose of an audit is to increase trust. How? By verification of the privacy measures. So in terms of the model here, our privacy concerns will shrink and our customers will receive a greater value of our product, Alexa. So now let's get into the legal analysis. So there are no current standards, I don't know if you can see, sorry about that. There are no real current standards for the privacy audits now. So we'll use Amazon's current their privacy policy as the standards for the audit. Now the great part about this is over time the privacy measures of Alexa will improve, as well as the policies that govern how Alexa works. The privacy policies will also improve. Now we also have to talk about one more thing, the future regulations. So right now, the Internet of Things, there's very limited regulations with regards to privacy. And as we've kind of seen in the history of financial statement audits, when consumers don't trust or when there are concerns, regulations tend to follow. And now Amazon has the opportunity to be the trendsetter, to be the role model for other firms in the Internet of Things and capitalize. And with that, I will pass it off to Mark to talk about the finances and to wrap it up.
Thanks, Alex. So we've really looked at how this strategy is going to look. So let's dive into the possibility for this strategy to actually make money. It makes financial sense, as well as an implementation timeline. So we've identified three main cases for the financial success of this program. Our worst case is looking around that break-even number, or just above at 7.5% over the next 4 years. Our best case is around a 450% number for a return on investment. But I really would like to hone in on this expected case of 268% and where this number is coming from. Now, as you can see here, in the first year, we're not necessarily making too much money, but we're certainly ramping up profits throughout the foreseeable future, generating tens of millions of dollars off of this. So now, what do these numbers actually look like? So now the costs are heavily front-loaded in the first year. This annual report won't be released until the end of 2017, and there's a lot of research and development throughout this entire process that needs to be done. But in years 2, 3, and 4, you can see we're generating a positive profit. Now this is because we're tapping into these hypothetical consumers, such as Morgan, that's very worried about having private conversations in their home, and we'd like to sell this Alexa product to him in the future. Now if we take these for-profits and we discount them back to present value using the appropriate cost of capital, we're looking at a profit of around $110 million, or a return on investment of 268%. Now, let's delve into what this process is going to look like. So we've identified 4 main stages of this strategy rollout. The first is the research stage, looking at what companies may we be willing to partner with, moving into the development stage of actually developing this audit and what it's going to look like, launching this audit towards the end of 2017 after all of the research and development has really been handled, and then finally inducing annual reports thereafter. Now there's a built-in feedback loop with each one of these stages, where we're comparing costs with the budget, we're communicating with auditors, as well as really looking at these annual reports and seeing if there's any corrective action that needs to be taken. Now that was a lot of information. I'd like to go ahead and conclude a little bit and wrap it up. So we started with the Internet of Things. We started of looking at Alexa's role in the Internet of Things. We discussed an analysis of Alexa's current state from an ethical, a legal, and a financial standpoint. And lastly, we moved into our independent privacy audit and how we can leverage off of our current analysis to really address these privacy concerns, improve relationships, verify compliance, and increase profits. With that being said, I'd like to hand it off to question and answer. Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. A number of my fellow board members sit on the ethics committee of the board. Could one of you, in a sentence, tell me what the ethical issue is here?
So essentially, the issue boils down to privacy versus convenience in this case. The consumer's willingness to sacrifice one for the other and trying to maximize convenience while minimizing privacy concerns to create the most value to the consumer.
I'd like to sort of add to what Jared said there. So in one sentence, if we had to wrap this up, it's concerns about being recorded in your own home. So that's a lot of the ethical issues that are revolving around this is what exactly is Alexa doing with my own private conversations in my own home?
And so what's the answer to that? So what is Alexa doing with the conversations that are happening in the home?
I can respond to that. And so basically, as we explained in the how-to, the conversations are not recorded, they're stored locally when Alexa, the wake word has not been said. But when the wake word has been said, they do record the question and send it to the server, which then catalogs it and saves it. They do this to allow the Alexa to learn, because that's how the software works. The more input, the better it is. And if you would like to, as a user though, you can clear that data. You have the opportunity to clear all of the data. But the reason for the privacy audit is because you, as Amazon, have released that information to us, but just to trust the consumers, we want to add to the consumers' trust, we just want to verify everything is properly done.
What does stored locally mean?
Stored locally basically means it is so it's continuously recording, but because the device does not have a large memory to save, it's only recorded on the device, so it goes nowhere except for what you have, and then they record over it.
How fast does that move?
That's the part of the privacy audit, is we don't know. Is Amazon has not disclosed this information, but it's a very valid concern, which is why the privacy audit should uncover what the answer to that question is.
But from my understanding, if I understood your presentation to us, is that the data never really goes away. Even if we were to clear it, and we had legal implications that came to us asking us to disclose the information with those 2 steps, it still exists.
Sometimes. So if the user has not cleared the data, it will still exist on Amazon's server, which Amazon does have access to. Well, as we saw with the Arkansas case, Amazon does fight it and make sure that the warrant is valid. They can release the data, which is overall for the good of the society. Jared, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, to elaborate on that point, the data only goes to the servers if you've given the wake word. So if you say, Alexa, play this song for me, then that gets stored on Alexa servers. Otherwise, the data that's continuously recording just stays on that device, and then it's being re-recorded over. So in the case of the Arkansas murder that we discussed, Amazon's claim was that the data that from that evening, that the data that was ongoing that he had never given the wake word to was already gone because it had already been re-recorded over because it's constantly recording.
Excuse me. And it seems as though you're saying that our main concern as Amazon board is that folks are not necessarily willing to make this trade, this value trade you talked about, convenience for privacy, and that by performing this audit, supposedly that will result in an increase of those consumers that are willing to do so. So if the population that has purchased Alexa, why would we not just rely on our advertising dollars, our marketing dollars, and word of mouth? We seem to have already been seeing increases in sales. Why don't we just rely on that?
So currently, Amazon has seen exponential growth, as I mentioned earlier, in their device sales. But we think that this number can actually be increased even more through addressing a lot of these privacy concerns. So the number of consumers that have already purchased this product may have identified the trade-off between convenience and privacy, and they've been okay with it, or they've justified it in their own minds. But the consumers that aren't okay with this, they haven't validated Amazon's actions through making a conscious decision to purchase this product. So if we can release an audit and a transparency report that details exactly when and where or how their conversations are being recorded, then hopefully we can tap into this consumer base.
And if I could add on to this, it is likely that this market will be regulated. There have been requests by multiple privacy groups for America to regulate this. So it's not just looking at the revenue gains, but looking at the potential profits lost with regulations if Amazon's not at the forefront of this issue and leading the privacy concerns.
Is this really gonna come up? I mean, one criminal case in Arkansas, who cares? I mean, we have billions of transactions a year at Amazon. We get subpoenas all the time to produce records in court cases, civil cases. Somebody says that they didn't order something, here's the record that shows that they did. Why do we worry about this?
So I think one way to answer that question is that the Internet of Things has become this huge revolutionary movement. And it's just started to actually integrate into our lives and be connected with our home. I know in my own home, I can tell Alexa to turn my lights on or off. I can tell Alexa to lock my door. And that's a thing of the future. It's a thing of the present and the future. It's not a thing of the past. And we think that a lot of these lawsuits and these criminal trials will be coming up a lot more in the future, potentially. And addressing these concerns and getting ahead of the game is maybe the move for the board of directors for Amazon.
Well, nobody's gonna say, Alexa, I'm gonna murder Alex now. Pay close attention.
So I can add on to that. So part of the problem here is the recording itself. So the recording, when you say it, it's stored, it goes to your phone, and you can replay the recording from your phone. Say you ask what the weather is. When you hit play, it'll say, hey Alexa, what's the weather like? So our concern is, how did it have that hey Alexa part in the beginning if the Alexa is supposed to start the recording? So this is a problem here. So yes, I may not have said, hey Alexa, I'm going to go murder myself, I guess, if we're using this example. But it's possible that this is being recorded. And as he said, we don't know how long this is being saved for. This has not been released.
So when you say it's stored locally, not only is it stored on Alexa, but it gets into my phone system?
No, that's only when you say the word Alexa. But the question then arises is, how did it record Alexa before I said that? Which is implying that I could be saying other words and it's still recording that.
Can we just train Alexa to give all these disclosures as soon as they turn her on and be like, you might be recorded.
You have the right to remain silent.
Right, can we, I mean, it's a legitimate idea is, can we train Alexa to basically read the rights to all their consumers?
It is an option for you. We are just giving you the option which will be transparent to consumers, but not yelling in their face what all the ideas are. It's to allow consumers to feel confident, but not impede on this convenience that Alexa does offer.
Can you hit the next slide?
Yeah.
So we also have, again, sorry. Oh, maybe back. The hardware slide, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So here we also have the Amazon Tap. So it's not continuously recording. You can press the button there, and that starts the recording. So there are options other than what we've talked about.
So what is the trade-off or impact if we choose not to do this audit?
So the potential is truly endless. Just as the Internet of Things is evolving, there are continuous privacy concerns and regulations that in the end, it could be said that Amazon can no longer collect the user's data in their home and send it. It can no longer be sent via the cloud because regulations are being lobbied for so much. And if that happens, then Alexa is almost rendered useless. And all of those previous sales no longer are able to increase the 7% of consumer packaged goods, no longer are able to have that convenience of ordering. So now not only are you losing your potential consumers, you could potentially lose Alexa altogether if it is not accurately handled today.
So I'm not sure I'm following. You're telling me that if I choose not to do this privacy audit, then basically I'm initiating the demise of my product.
I can add on to this. So I'll talk about it in terms of marketing. So we have a SWOT analysis where you talk about your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Now this very well would be a threat, but what we're trying to do is frame this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity for Amazon to create this privacy report and be at the forefront of this change that is pending. There will be more regulations, and it would be fantastic if Amazon could be the case study for what those changes will look like.
Seems to me this is going to be a much more expensive and complicated process than you've outlined. Because you don't have in it right now a system to detect complaints or problems or violations, investigate them, correct them, and prevent them from happening in the future. That whole system is not there. That takes a lot of person power to operate that.
So in terms of that, we have your prevention costs for quality. You have your prevention costs, your appraisal costs, an internal failure cost, and your external. So by prevention, we have an audit here that is supposed to detect the changes that as they arise. You're supposed to, the auditors, the consultants, the technicians are supposed to say, hey, you know, with this we've seen a gap here. We should address this before it becomes a big problem. And so we talked about appraisal sum, and then the biggest cost of all would be an external problem, such as we saw with Snapchat, with Yahoo. They were sued for tens of millions of dollars, and their reputation could tank from that. So what we're trying to do is, again, be at the forefront to prevent all this from happening.
But how do you hear from the users who have a complaint they think their information has been leaked?
What was that?
Do you wait for, how do you hear their complaint? Do you wait for them to file suit in court? Or do they have an avenue to tell you, hey, I think there's something going wrong right now?
You're saying the complaints to talk about it in the audit, to talk
No,
about?
I'm saying, I've got this Alexa thing, and I think it's listening to me and it's broadcasting out to the world.
Yeah. Can you go to the sections of the audit, the blue square?
Yes.
So this is where the analysis in the audit is coming from. We talk about our operations, our recordings, our data, and all those questions are answered within the audit. So for the operations, we have, how does the device work? Actually, there's an appendix slide, one of the first appendix slides. And all these questions are addressed and answered in the audit. So as a customer, it's kind of hard for me to understand exactly what's at risk here. Whereas the technicians, the consultants, the IT people that we hire for this audit are more attuned to know where the concerns are. So they answer these questions. How do these devices operate? And I believe on this slide and the next slide, all these questions here, there already are these privacy audits. This one came from one, I believe, in Canada. And the privacy audit was directed towards the government, not so much the Internet of Things, but we're trying to bring the privacy audit into the Internet of Things because we identified a clear need for that.
I don't see your stats on complaints.
So actually on your website, they have these complaints, and there were, I believe 100,000 lists of warrants that either they applied for, and there was the columns that said either we complied in total, we partially complied, or we rejected the warrant. And the two that Jared, he talked about how with the Arkansas case, there were 2 warrants, both were rejected by Amazon. That would fall under that statistic on you.
Look, if the rest of you just don't listen for a minute, this is confidential within the board, and We've been approached by the NSA. And it turns out Alex has been having conversations with the Russian ambassador.
It's true.
And we would like Alexa to record those. I think we're gonna go ahead and approve that, right, board? Is that okay?
Yep.
There
No
is
such
definitely-
agency?
So,
That's okay, right?
So there's.
We don't need an audit for that.
There would be definitely an ethical concern there, whether that would be allowed or not. If the government approves this request and it goes through the standards of getting the approval to, there are these wiretap acts where under general circumstances, you're not allowed to, or there are restrictions for having this, but that would be kind of the same thing as putting a bug in someone's home, which is permissible, assuming the standards are met.
So you're a potential murderer, you're a Russian spy, and other than that, you're a cool guy.
Pretty much.
So there's this thing called the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, which kind of dictates wiretaps. In the case of Amazon Alexa, the way you'd be wiretapping it, you'd be recording so much information that it would make it unlawful. The idea behind wiretaps is that when you're making a call, you're only recording a limited amount of information, and you're only allowed to use that information if it's relevant. The problem with Amazon is recording all the information that goes on in a person's house would be seen as an invasion of privacy, would be seen as overstepping that boundary. So it's likely that you'd be able to argue in court that a wiretap would thus be unlawful in the case of Alexa.
I don't think so. You're just putting a microphone inside the target.
Well, while you can introduce a microphone into somebody's house, the method of doing so would be different. You're actually altering something that somebody's already bought. There might be a violation of thoughts with regard to that. This could always be argued in court. It's always possible that this doesn't succeed, but I would advise Amazon, in the event of this happening, to argue their case and try to prevent the wiretap if possible.
So I'm not gonna mention names here, but he knows who he is. Has a history of mental illness, and he uses his Alexa to buy weapons over the internet and ammunition. Is that okay?
no, that is not allowed, and it is not possible through Amazon's Alexa.
Yeah, all purchases are made through Amazon.com, so if you were to go on Amazon.com and look up the item, it would have to be there. Amazon also already takes precautions that you can't buy weapons like that through Amazon.
You do not allow your users to buy weapons on your website.
Yeah.
Well, that's now, how about later? They may change.
That is,
It's possible that Amazon changed their policy, I would
but
recommend
you are
that.
creating a culture within your site and choosing to do, and we would advise you to remain this culture true to being customer obsessed and what your customers want. And currently, what your customers want is not to have those guns on your site, and we would recommend remaining with that.
So in what way does your recommended privacy audit align or reinforce our company's values?
What?
Right, in the bulk of values there. So we can go to customer obsession. So one of our values is customer obsession, and we're focused on creating maximum value for consumers. The idea is that by the convenience that Alexa creates that value for consumers. And by reducing privacy concerns, which could also reduce value, we're maximizing value for those consumers. We're really honing in on that customer obsession, and also we're giving them more information with regards to what kind of privacy is being protected, thus making consumers more confident in their decision to purchase an Alexa.
Do you have our values in your study?
No, sir, we have looked through them, we just did not put them in the slides.
We mentioned customer obsession, which is one of the values.
Customer obsession is your main value and your top value, but others relate to providing convenience. They all surround customer obsession, such as providing convenience and offering your consumers the lowest price possible, and such as that.
So it's your belief that if we conduct this audit, it will in some way or another increase or improve the customer response of customer obsession?
Yes, sir. You're putting the customer at the forefront of the privacy concerns and instead of trying to fight them or butt heads with them.
I think the best way to sort of talk about that is with transparency. So the biggest thing with this audit is providing transparency to our customers and really connecting with them on a personal basis from a corporation to a consumer.
Board, any more questions? Okay. Take a deep breath, guys.
Thank you very much.
Still spotted.
Good job. I
Thank
thought
you.
one small point, all of you blocked my side view. You had great slides, I couldn't see them. Just as a technique, sort of figure out where your audience is. I always try to stand over to the side of the screen. And in fact, when I use a podium, that's where I put it. So I cannot possibly be in front of the screen.
That's fair.
So sort of be aware of those sight lines like this, especially if you have any slides for tomorrow. I don't think you do, at least the 10 minutes. But really good use of the material. What slides did you use?
I'm sorry?
Is that PowerPoint or is
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
She's a win.
Excellent job there. A level that was digestible, not too far-reaching, but when necessary, you had done your research to know the pertinent laws or research and so forth. So I also thought you did a decent job addressing the overview of the problem from an ethical, legal, and financial standpoint. 86.7%. It's pretty precise.